Today I'm going to answer a very important burning question that seems to be taking at least people that I know by storm. Is the Copic Airbrush system actually worth it? What's up guys, I'm J.Rod at BLACKEST. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for tuning in. We craft amazing comic book style illustrations through a variety of different mediums. Now today we are doing something different, as I won't be crafting any artwork in today's video, but instead I'm going to be going over the strengths, the weaknesses, and answering as many questions as I can on the Copic Airbrush system. I purchased this system 2 months ago from the time of recording this video, and I have been bombarded with so many questions, both from you guys and from my job, and I thought it'd be cool to answer them as best as I can because so many of you guys want to know if this is worth it. And in all honesty, that is a very difficult question to answer, but I think I've narrowed it down to 3 questions that if you answer yes to, then it is worth it. And I really think this is going to help you make that decision for purchasing the airbrush system. Question number 1, do you use Copics? It's a very simple question, but it's one you have to keep in mind because this will only work with Copics. In fact, this will only work with 2 of the Copic brands that Copic makes. That is the first question to ask. For me, that's a yes. If you're watching this video, I assume either you use Copics or you have an interest in them. Question number 2, do you have a lot of Copics? Because that's going to be another factor. If you only have like a handful of them, then I don't think it's worth it. This really becomes a very effective, very useful tool the more you have. For me, that's a yes. I have over 157 Copics, not including duplicates. And question 3, the most important question, is do you have an airbrush and or an interest in airbrush? If you say no to this specific question, because this is the most important one, I would say this system is not for you. But if you do have an interest in airbrush, if you already have airbrushes and you're using Copics already, then this is a must-have. I really think it's worth it if you answer yes to all 3 of those questions. For me, I got really lucky. My dad bought a compressor and an airbrush before I was born in the 90s. So I already had the airbrush and I was using Copics already. So for me, it just made sense. It was a really good way to get a little more extra use and a lot more variety out of what I already had. So again, if you answer yes to all 3 of those questions, I definitely recommend and encourage you to pick up the airbrush system. Now that we've gone over if the Copic airbrush system is right for you, let's go ahead and talk about the different ways you can purchase it and how it works, as there are 5 different ways to get this system, and there's one that I think is the best way to go about. Now the first way to get this system is going to be the cheapest and the most incomplete, and that is just the air grip itself, selling for $16. The air grip is just the plastic part that the marker clips into that has the airflow through it with the nozzle control. Now on the bottom it does have threads on it, but they're not really going to fit any airbrush hose, at least ones that I could find, so I don't know if it's for a Japanese system or it's just meant to be a replacement if you crack the air grip itself and need to replace it, but you don't want to buy a whole new system. Now the second way to purchase this system is my personal favorite way, and is the one that I have, and that is the airbrush system with the adapter, which is this can right here. Now if you notice, I have mine taped and I'll go over that later in the video, but this is really good because it gives you the air grip and an adapter that's going to give you a 1/8 thread that you can attach pretty much any standard air hose to. Iwata works really well with these. Now this sells for $40, and in my opinion is well worth it, though I have seen it on sale for $25 to $30 depending on where you go. Now the starter set is the third way to purchase the airbrush system, and I don't recommend it. It's just the air grip and a small can of air, and the reason I recommend it is because it's the exact same price as the air grip and the adapter, so just go for the adapter. You're not going to be reliant on Copic or other cans of air to do your artwork. You'll be able to hook it up to a compressor easier, and it's literally the exact same amount of money. If it was far cheaper, like $20, I could totally understand that as a starter set and then get the adapter, but since it's the same price as the adapter, I really can't recommend this one in all honesty. Going from one that I honestly can't recommend to one that's not a bad recommendation, I think it's really good for a complete starter set, is the complete starter set. It sells for $100. You get the air grip, the adapter, a large can of air that can spray for quite a bit, a foam base to store everything, and a really good high quality air hose. Not only is this good because you can use it with a compressor right off the bat, but you also have a small can of air and the foam core to store everything and keep everything nice and neat while you're working so the cans don't tip over. Is a really nice touch. If you want a really good complete introduction to the airbrush system, this isn't bad. I still recommend the $40 airbrush and the adapter more just because it's super economical, but this isn't a bad option. And the 5th and most expensive way to purchase this item is going to be the Copic airbrush with a compressor. That's right. This can cost you anywhere from $220 to $250, and you do get a full compressor, a hose, the adapter, and the air grip itself. So if you don't have a compressor, that could definitely be a way to get it. Personally speaking, there are more economical ways to do this. Like for example, Iwata has a really good compressor you can get for $120. The Iwata hoses only cost like $15, $20, and then the airbrush with the adapter adapter costs you $40. So that right there does save you quite a bit of money compared to this system, but it's something I did want to point out, and I think it's really cool that Copic actually has a compressor for it. Now that we've gone over where you can purchase the airbrush, let's go over the stuff that you need to know going into this system, because there's quite a bit I had to figure out that really no one is talking about in their videos. First things first, that's obvious, read the instructions. While I'm going to go over everything that is in here, I do recommend giving it a read through, as there's some really nice visuals in here that help to make everything super understandable. Now I know this is the Copic airbrush and the adapter, but everything I'm going to talk about will be compatible for all the different ways you could purchase it, no matter which one you chose. The first important thing to keep in mind about the Copic airbrush system is that this is not going to be compatible with every Copic product. It will only be compatible with the Copic Sketch and the Copic Classic markers. It will not be compatible with the Copic Wide or the Copic Chow. However, you can modify the system to allow the chows to fit in, but they won't click into place, and it's going to be a lot of finicky work, so while it is doable, I personally don't recommend it. You're also going to want to make sure that you have the chisel ends on your marker, so if you're someone who switches them with the alternate nibs, you're going to have to change them back to use it, as that's what this airbrush uses. It simply clicks into place with the chisel ends straight up like that, right next to the nozzle, and there you go. You're completely loaded in to start using it. This is also the same for the Copic Classic. It will literally just click right into place. It feels really secure. I don't feel like this is going to fall out the minute I start moving my arm. And something that's really worth highlighting is that Copic does make a blank plastic that you can mix your own ink into and fill up, which makes this even more versatile for custom colors. Now, as I mentioned before, the bottom of the adapter is a 1/8 thread, which is really good because that will fit most standard air hoses. In fact, the Iwata one fits perfectly. And it will screw them together really well. You don't even need to use a tool. I just use my hand. You just want to make sure it's nice and tight for two reasons. One, if it's too loose, you will use air pressure. And two, as you start to work, it will become even more loose and may actually shoot off, which you don't want to happen because it is compressed air. You do have to be careful, which does lead me to a common question a lot of people have. Will this explode? No, it will not. Yes, this is plastic, but this is metal. And more importantly, most compressors are able to sense when air is no longer flowing and essentially automatically shut off to avoid excess buildup to prevent any tools from exploding. Something I do want to point out because a lot of people have been asking me that. No, I have not lost my hands. No, I've not lost an eye. No, this thing has never exploded on me in the 2 months that I've had and used it. And one important safety tip to keep in mind when using the airbrush system is just like with a normal airbrush or a can of spray paint or some type of spray varnish, do wear a mask while using it. You don't want to breathe in chemicals. This is just a simple little N95 face mask that I got on my job for like $2. It's a really nice mask and I wear it when I use the system because I don't want to breathe in any chemicals. Now to answer your question of why there is tape on my airbrush, and this is a very important thing to keep in mind when you first get the system, there is no spring in here. This actually relies on a very clever mechanism that I will show right here in some B footage, but essentially the way this works is a perfect balance of tightness for the adapter and the air grip. If the adapter is screwed in too tight into the airbrush, the end peg will attach to the hole and it will essentially keep shooting out air, so you won't be able to have much control or turn it off. However, if it's too loose, you'll have very low to no pressure. So you gotta find the right balance, and that can take a minute, and I definitely recommend spending time to make sure that you find that right balance where it's not too tight, it's not too loose. And then when you find it, tape it so that you don't have to worry about it shifting to refine it, because that is one of the downsides to this airbrush. It can be a little finicky, but after you find that perfect spot, just add a little bit of tape so it doesn't move and you're all set. And it was very frustrating when I first got the system. In fact, I actually thought it was broken because of that. But after finding the sweet spot, you're able to go in and figure out what this is capable of, and you can do some really cool stuff with it. Now, I'm not going to say this is comparable to an airbrush, but I will say it's pretty similar to a single action siphon style airbrush. So dual action and single action refers to the action of the button. So single action will only control the amount of paint going out, it will not control the pressure. And that is the case here. You have a fixed pressure that you have to manually adjust with distance and angling. So do keep that in mind. It's also very similar to a siphon airbrush, which has the paint on the bottom and then uses air pressure to siphon it up and out. And that's what this does. The air pressure is all on the bottom and then it pushes it out and the paint is loaded on the top. Now this metal nozzle is where the air comes out of, and this is your adjuster. When you push this down, you allow the air to flow through it, and that's all this button does. Taking your marker and attaching it in place, you can see how it lines up and that the air will just push the ink off of the nib. And that's something cool about alcohol ink, is that it's that liquidy, you can do that. Now because it's at an angle, you will not be working straight forward like this. Like a normal airbrush, you will have to work off of an angle, which I can say isn't that bad and is a pretty quick adjustment you can make. Also, something that you do have to keep in mind is that unlike other airbrushes, like I mentioned before, you're going to have to manually control with the distance of your arm the coverage and the intensity of the color. So the closer you are, the less coverage you get. You're going to be filling up a smaller area, but that area will be much more intense. You'll have a lot more of the color on it. But if you move it back, you're going to cover a larger area, but you're going to have to build it up as it's going to have a lot less of the color on there. And we will do a demonstration to show throw that in next week's video. Now, working with the tilts and that manual control does take time, but it is something that you can overcome. It's something that I've really gotten used to. It's something that I can now do. It is two more things to think of when you're working with alcohol markers, which already requires a lot of thinking and a lot of playing because of its transparent nature. But in my opinion, it's not that bad, and it was pretty easy for me to get used to it and adapt to it. So I didn't really struggle with that. But then again, I've been using markers for a long time, and I always push myself in exploring new mediums. So perhaps I'm a little more easier adjusted to that. Either way, it's something I did want to mention. Another question that I get commonly asked about this is, will it damage the nibs of your markers? No, it will not. It's specifically designed to not damage the nibs. It's simply pulling the ink off the nib and putting it into a mist form. So it won't damage the nib, but with repeated use with the exact same color, it can dry it out. Just simply pop it out, hold it this way, and because of how liquid alcohol ink is, it will flow back to the end. If you do somehow damage the nib, I've never heard anyone damaging the nibs with this system. They do make replacement nibs, and you're actually not using that much ink from the system. If you were to color in a background using your chiseled nib, you would actually use more ink, as this is kind of finding it and creating layers. You could create really cool gradients, so it doesn't burn through the ink faster, in all honesty. At least in my experience, I've heard some people say that it does, but from what I've experienced, it does not. Another common question people ask me is the Copic Airbrush better than just a normal airbrush? And in some ways, yes, but overall, no. The normal airbrush is far superior. Like, this is an amazing tool, but it has some limitations. Think about the Copic Airbrush as a hyper-specialized airbrush tool for a very specific product, because that's what it is. A normal airbrush, you can use acrylics, alcohol ink, watercolor, you can use ink, acrylic paint. There's so much you can do with an airbrush. Now, this is a siphon dual action airbrush. It's a really nice airbrush, but it's quite expensive. I mean, normal airbrushes, like a really good airbrush nowadays, is going to cost you like $150. This cost my dad $200 back in the 90s. They also require a lot of maintenance, a lot of cleaning. You have to be very careful. You also have to make sure the compressor you have is set to the proper PSI. So too much will be bad, too little will be bad. So you gotta hit that just right. So there's a lot of different factors to the airbrush. While the Copic Airbrush is super affordable, I mean, $40 for this compared to a $200 airbrush or $150 modern airbrush, that's not bad at all. If you already have the compressor, if you don't and you have to get a compressor and it does bump it up, you would still run into that issue if you're looking just to get an airbrush to use with alcohol ink. Because if you just use this with alcohol markers, this is really nice because the alcohol does not go through the system at all. It's still contained in the marker. So what's great about that is you can take your markers, open them all up, and literally just plug them in and switch colors on the fly. Yes, a siphon airbrush can do that more efficiently than a gravity-fed airbrush, but I still have to clean it thoroughly in between switching paint. But I don't have to do that with the airbrush. I can plug in my red, spray it down, pull it out, and then plug in a new marker right in there and literally just switch it on the go. And that, in my opinion, is the strength of the Copic Airbrush. The fact that you are making your Copic markers, which are pretty pricey, but still the #1 marker on the market, still the industry standard, and won't be going away anytime soon, and makes them more versatile. You're able to solve, in my opinion, the alcohol marker problem, which is covering a large area. You can now do backgrounds. You can cover a large area very fast, very efficiently, and very easily with this. And the fact that you're able to now do more techniques with your markers, which are already super versatile, just makes this even better. I love the fact that I could switch colors on the fly. I can put red as my base and then go in with an orange and then a yellow, and then I could even take my colorless blender, plug it in, and start applying it to help blend everything. I love the fact that I can layer colors and fill in large backgrounds. I'm going to be doing a huge space mural that I couldn't even think about doing before I got the airbrush. So this is actually giving me more things to be creative with, and it's a really good add-on for Copics. It's not for everyone. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. This is not for everyone. But if you use Copics and you have a lot of Copics and you have an interest already have an airbrush, this is a must-have. This is a really good tool to have to get more versatility out of your Copics, and in my opinion, is worth it. Is it better than an airbrush? No. Does it make your ink magically become opaque? That was another complaint people had. No, you still have to use the same techniques with your markers, just now you have an extra variety to them and you're able to use them in more of a mist way. It's a lot easier to fill in backgrounds, it's a lot easier to add ore, it's a lot easier to do more techniques, and that's what this is. This is a really good add-on tool to Copic artists. If you check all three of those boxes, I heavily recommend this, specifically the airbrush and the adapter set. If you want to get one that just has the can of air just to try it, then yeah, go ahead, but I really think this is going to be the best way, especially if you already have a compressor that you're able to take the hose, hook it up to, and start making some really cool, amazing art. This is a really nice tool to have. It's one that I really recommend, and if you guys are interested in airbrushes and you have Copics, this would definitely be a good step in that direction to get an idea of how these things work, how they feel, and see what you can create with them. I really recommend this, and in my opinion, it gets a solid 8 out of 10. It gets the 8 because, again, it's not for everyone, it's a little niche, but I really think this serves the purpose that it was made for perfectly. My only major complaint is how finicky this can be. You just gotta find that right balance balance, and as soon as you do, you are in for a treat. And hopefully this answered all the questions that you had on the airbrush system. That is my thoughts and opinions on it. I really think it's worth it. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please stay tuned for next week as we'll be crafting an amazing piece of artwork using the airbrush system. I'm very excited about that. I did think about putting it in this video, but I realized, hey, this video is going to be really long, and some people just want to see the artwork, some people just want to get the information. I think it's best just to split it up. I may combine these two in the future, we'll see, but right now, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel for more art animation based content. Remember, my name is J.Rod of Battlebrawlerproductions. I draw Power My Own Soul, and I also now have posters of my artwork, so you can purchase some of the stuff that I created, both digital and physical now. It's that first link in the description. It really helps the channel out, and thank you all so much for watching. Take care, stay safe, and keep being creative.